Hi there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here and 4Ks and collecting and Blu-ray labels. And today we come back to one of the stalwarts of the home media collecting community for several decades now, and that's Criterion, the Criterion Collection. And it is really nice that they have this legacy of, a remarkable group of films that they continue to add to all the time. We get excited on the 15th of the month to see what they are adding or upgrading. There's been a lot of upgrades, but I have some originals here, I think. At least one, if not a couple, that aren't just upgrades. Upgrades are exciting too, especially in this age of 4K. We got a lot of great looking movies that can look even better on 4K UHD. But I'm going to start out with a new restoration from a filmmaker that I like very much, and that's Sean Baker, the, of course, multi-hyphenate, 4 Oscar-winning director who cleaned up with Anora, rightfully a really great movie. Another one that's getting a nice release from Criterion. But this is an earlier film from him, and I'm really excited that his early films he's been taking the time with and getting them restored, and they're getting attention that they deserve. And I, for one, have neglected these films, and I feel bad about it because they're very good. I really enjoyed Takeout from 2004, one of his earliest efforts, and that got a nice restoration and a Blu-ray from Criterion a few years ago, and now we have Prince of Broadway from 2008, which is definitely of a piece with Takeout. Both are, urban sort of New York stories, both deal with immigrants in a way, and people hustling at the edges of society, really. And that's something I think that kind of goes through a lot of Sean's work, ultimately, those kind of characters. And yeah, this is really, really enjoyable, and one that I'd meant to see, but it's same thing with Takeout. Like, I'd meant to see it, but I'm glad I waited, and now you get to see these new 4K digital restorations supervised and approved by Sean Baker, and in this case, restoration supervisor Alex Coco. Color corrected, and they just look wonderful. These are very DIY movies shot on shoestrings, and these restorations really give them some extra oomph, if you will, if you're seeing them for the first time, and so I was very excited to watch Prince of Broadway. The website describes it as a raw, disarmingly moving slice of neorealism, early career triumph from DIY auteur Sean Baker, and it plunges us into the world of West African immigrant Lucky, played by Prince Adu, a real-life character for sure, who, as they were doing research for the movie, people were telling them they should find him, and when they did find him, he said basically, if you make me the star of your movie, I will help you with locations, I'll help you with actors, and it just seems to have been a wonderful collaboration that came to pass. So Lucky and his Armenian Lebanese boss, Levin, Karen Karagulian, who I really, really liked in this movie, really a lot. Just one of those actors that just pops, really pops. 2 unlikely friends who peddle knockoff designer goods in Manhattan's wholesale district. Basically what happens is when a long-forgotten ex of Lucky's forces him to take care of a young son he didn't even know he had. He has to sort of figure out how to become a father without losing his edge in the counterfeit merch game, as it were. Capturing the chaos of urban life through expressive handheld camera work, remarkably naturalistic performances, and flashes of manic humor, Prince of Broadway is one of Baker's most vivid explorations of the illusory nature of the American dream. Another thing that he seems to be drawn to, that sort of idea of the illusory nature of the American dream. But man, oh man, what a performance from Prince Adu. Just really, I mean, naturalistic is a good word, but I don't know, just feels lived in, feels real, sympathetic in this way that I was really taken with ultimately. And so it's just super interesting to watch this play out and watch this kid, the child that they have is really must have been somewhat chill. I gotta listen through the all the extras and get a full read on that. But the kid is pretty good and just is stoic enough in the right moments that it plays for great comedy. There's some wonderful moments with the kid, and it's in no way cutesy. Really, it's just I don't know. It just really worked for me. So this one includes an essay by film critic Robert Daniels, which I always like to just sort of excerpt. I do like that the actual disc is looks like it's a burned Blu-ray or something, which is cute. Okay, so from the essay, a gritty neo-realist portrait of New York City's underground economy, Sean Baker's Prince of Broadway disarms us in its opening moments by foregrounding its protagonist's effortless charm over his economic desperation. The first few minutes of the film introduce us to Ghanaian-born street hustler named Lucky, that's Prince Adu, who sells knockoff designer purses and sneakers in a shop located in Manhattan's wholesale district and owned by his American-Lebanese boss, Levin. What you working with today? What you need? Lucky calls out flirtatiously to a potential customer. Some Prada, something like that, she replies nonchalantly. I've got it all. I've got Gucci, Prada, just name it. He exudes charisma and self-assurance. He stands out on this bustling block, which Baker surveys with kinetic camera work, punctuated by crash zooms highlighting the multi-ethnic community of immigrant salesmen competing for shoppers' attention. Prince of Broadway, Sean Baker's third feature, solidified his status as a DIY auteur with an extraordinary degree of artistic control. He directed, wrote, produced, edited, and shot the movie, and his signature is evident in its irreverent tone and naturalistic touch, which would go on to become key elements in his subsequent work. The off-the-cuff levity of the opening sequence can be traced back to the bi-weekly public access television series Junk Tape 1988, which Baker co-created with Dan Milano and Spencer Chenoy, and which was broadcast by Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Hosted by a puppet named Greg the Bunny, the show repeatedly denies the child is his by pointing to the lightness of the boy's complexion, receives the results of a paternity test. He chooses to have Levin read the news to him at the Manhattan shop, which, oops, sorry. I just totally jumped to the wrong paragraph. Greg the Bunny, the show, features chopped and screwed clips from popular movies in one episode. The bloodthirsty alien from Predator hunts down the hero Forrest Gump. Prince of Broadway is certainly a very different kind of project. For one thing, it doesn't employ pre-existing media for comic effect, but it does repeat the trick of inserting a juvenile perspective into the chaos of the adult world. Sorry about that misreading, but yeah, so a good setup for the essay, and like I said, just a really interesting movie to see this street hustler suddenly saddled with a child, and he's got to explain it to his now girlfriend, who is pretty remarkably understanding about it to begin with. But yeah, really a gem, really an interesting movie, and one that I'm gonna highly recommend you check out. Now, the supplements include 2 audio commentaries, one featuring Sean Baker and the other featuring producer and co-writer Darren Dean, as well as associate producer and actor Victoria Tate and actor Crterion Karagulian. So those are 2 commentaries on this, which is great. I love having more than one track, and this has a new introduction by Sean Baker, which is about 10 minutes, where he talks about, how the film came to be, basically. Some of this territory is tread on in other features, but it's always great to have a new introduction from the filmmaker. There are 2 documentaries included on the disc. One is called Meet the Hustlers, and it's a 2011 documentary that features Sean Baker, producer and co-writer Darren Dean, production designer and script supervisor Stefanik, associate producer and actor Victoria Tate, and actors Crterion Karagulian Kayali Mayaga and Kat Sanchez, among others, and it's about 56 minutes long, so that's cool. 2011, so that's a few years after the film's made. And then there's also a 2024 doc called Reflections on Prince of Broadway, which has co-director Sean Baker gathering the cast and crew of Prince of Broadway for a reunion dinner and a series of interviews reflecting on the making of the film, and that's about 35 minutes. Also very cool. And Prince Adu is not included in the original Meet the Hustlers doc. I think Sean says something in the beginning about him not being available, but he is included in the this new one, which is great. You get his sort of take on it. There's a really neat restoration demonstration featuring Baker and Alex Coco, where you get to see a side-by-side comparisons of the original footage and then the color-corrected footage and stuff like that. And it's really special to get a look at that stuff because it really does change how you're going to perceive the film ultimately. You know, I mean, I think it's one of those movies that, it just looks great. Let's just bottom line it. It looks great, and I'm glad that they did the restoration. It's really going to make a difference for people seeing it for the first time like I did. There's also an archival interview with Sean Baker and Prince Adu that's about 7 minutes long as well, included here. So it's a really nice disc overall, and just very excited this is available, that I got to see it, and again, definitely recommend. Another one that I would imagine Sean is probably a fan of and has been highly influential in its time, and that is Charles Burnett's film Killer of Sheep. This is a 4K UHD release. This film was a huge influence on a lot of people, but not the least of which was David Gordon Green for his movie George Washington. I think you can see some real heavy lifts from that. Like, I mean, he clearly was really doing his own version of that. And that's cool because you watch it, and I'm sure at the time it was, and to this day, it's still quite a revelatory movie. And it's not even, it's a thesis film. And that's even more mind blowing that this is a thesis movie that Charles Burnett made. So the website says, a quiet revelation of American independent filmmaking, Charles Burnett's lyrical debut feature unfolds as a mosaic of black life in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles, where Stan, Henry Gale Sanders, a father worn down by his job in a slaughterhouse, and his wife, Casey Moore, seek moments of tenderness in the face of myriad disappointments. Equally attuned to the world of children and that of adults, that is definitely one thing that stands out about it, is its perspective from the kid's point of view in certain scenes. Again, very reminiscent of George Washington for sure. Let's see here. Equally attuned to the world of Burnett, acting as director, writer, producer, cinematographer, and editor, finds poetry amid everyday struggles in indelible images that glow with compassionate beauty. Largely unseen for decades following its completion in 1977, Killer of Sheep is now recognized as a touchstone of the groundbreaking LA Rebellion movement and a masterpiece that brought Black American lives to the screen with an aching intimacy like no film before. All that really, really resonant stuff. Killer of Sheep was restored and remastered by UCLA Film and Television Archives, Milestone Films, and the Criterion Collection. So that's something to keep in mind here. But it looks great. Shot on 16 originally, I believe, and now, okay, so new digital restoration approved by the director Charles Burnett. Now, this is where I get a little confused because I was listening to the commentary. There's a 2007 audio commentary with Charles Burnett and film scholar Richard Pena, and he asks him if he did a 35 blow-up of the movie, and he says that he didn't until later. And I think that's really interesting because I don't know. I'm assuming they're scanning the 16 for this 4K. But I guess there's also a blow up to 35 later that was done for maybe some theatrical screenings. But yeah, so it's originally a 16 millimeter movie, and one that, I love that grain and feeling of the black and white. Really gives it an extra something special. It obviously has a Blu-ray and a 4K, and it has new interviews with Charles Burnett, where he looks back on his film, which again was his thesis film for UCLA, and talks about what inspires him as a director. That's about a 13-minute new interview with him, as well as an interview with actor Henry Gale Sanders, who plays Stan in the film, and he recalls the film itself and filming on location in Watts in Los Angeles, and that's about 17 minutes. So it's cool to have both of them there. There's a new appreciation by Barry Jenkins, who's a big fan of this movie. It's about 19 minutes. Talks about the influence of this movie on him. There are 2 short films by Charles Burnett included here. Several Friends from 1969, which is a 22-minute short, and The Horse from 1973, which is 14 minutes. And that one includes a new introduction by Burnett, which is a little over a minute long. So you get a little intro to that film. So cool. I love when they include shorts. You can see the filmmakers sort of finding their way into, what will be their big work. There's an excerpt from the 2010 UCLA LA Rebellion Oral History Project featuring an interview with Charles Burnett by film scholar Jacqueline Stewart. And they talk about the LA Rebellion, which was like a pivotal period beginning in the late 60s when UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television brought together filmmakers from diverse communities, shaping sort of a new era of Black independent filmmaking that remains impactful to this day. So that's a cool interview. And then there's A Walk with Charles Burnett, 2019, a documentary by the great Robert Townsend, who was obviously clearly influenced by Burnett as a filmmaker. They discuss, as they go for a stroll through Watts, the Watts neighborhood in Los Angeles where Burnett grew up. They visit key locations from his life and films. Burnett reflects on the impact the neighborhood has on his art, the process of making his enormously influential films, and what it means for him to tell stories that center on people of color. It's a 56-minute documentary, and it's very cool to have that included as well. And there's also a documentary by Ross Lippman from 2007 that's a cast reunion. It's about 6 minutes long. So very cool to have this in 4K. Just a very important milestone independent film that, like I said, it's really unique, and you can see why it was as influential as it was. Talk about naturalistic in terms of the performances and things. It's really special, and it has both a sort of a sad desperation to it as well as some humor, which is a really interesting combination, I find. Do I have time to just... I've got an essay from Daniel Amir Jackson. Follow the children, always in a film by Charles Burnett. The children signify a parallel story within a story, truer truth, the heart or soul of the narrative. Children's voices open Burnett's debut feature Killer of Sheep, sweetly singing a lullaby about the stars and the moon and the arms of our mothers. The first face in the film is a child's, in close-up, brown, watery eyes, lips pursed tightly together, brow furrowed into deep lines. The boy is on the receiving end of a lesson, a talking to from an older man, most likely his father. The camera pulls back. We see the father as he upbraids his son for not defending his younger brother. If anything was to happen to me or your mother, you ain't got nobody except your brother. The black and white frame yields to the shadows, the sparseness of the room, the marks of wear on the walls. You're not a child anymore, a grown man rumbles. A woman walks in and slaps the young boy's face. Paul Robeson's authoritative baritone takes over for the children, singing the same lullaby heard earlier in the scene. A transformation has taken place. Robeson conveys a loss of innocence. Yeah, this is really just a very special film, and I'm very excited that it's available in this way, restored, looking great. So, good stuff. Killer of Sheep. Next, we have a little bit of a gear shift here. We have a classic, a cult classic of sorts, but I just basically call it a classic at this point, and that is Withnail and I, the 1987 film from the great Bruce Robinson, which has been with Criterion. Did they do a Laserdisc of it? They definitely did a DVD of it. It's been with Criterion for a long time. Part of the Handmade Films catalog. But this is a new 4K. I will discuss briefly the Arrow 4K, which I also have because I love this movie a lot. The ultimate cult British comedy, Bruce Robinson's semi-autobiographical cinematic bender is a feast of delectably florid dialogue delivered with a deadpan relish by stars Richard E. Grant and Paul McGann, as respectively WITHNAIL and I. I do love that the film features a character who's never named and is only ever credited as I. That's Paul McGann's character. A pair of perpetually soused, unemployed actors in the 60s London who, desperate to escape their nightmarishly grim flat, embark on a hilariously misbegotten country getaway beset by menacing locals, bare cupboards, and a randy uncle, all of which they may be able to withstand as long as they don't run out of alcohol. While Robinson's dazzling script yields quotable moments galore, it's the film's bittersweet evocation of a friendship gradually unraveling that gives this beloved end-of-youth tale its lasting poignancy. I remember working at the video store in college, and a friend of mine, Will, was just one of those guys who I knew had seen more movies than I had and knew more about movies than I did. And he was writing a script that I remember reading and enjoying, and he said it was equal parts... Let me see if I can remember this. WITHNAIL and I, Altered States, and oh man, there was something else in there. And right away I was like, WITHNAIL and I, what the heck is that? And at the time in college, I hadn't seen it. And so as soon as I read the script, I was like, well, I got to see WITHNAIL and I, because clearly whatever that was a big influence on him, and I like his taste. And so I watched it and was, knocked out by it. Richard E. Grant is just next level. Absolutely next level as WITHNAIL. Has some of the most I demand to have some booze is something I've said on more than one occasion because I admire this performance so much. But yeah, it's really quite a special movie, and you can see why it's such a cult item because of those performances. This is a new 4K digital restoration supervised by director of photography Peter Hannon with uncompressed binaural soundtrack and 2 audio commentaries are included here. One featuring director Bruce Robinson, and that's recorded from a 2020 Esquire UK live stream watch-along thing that they did, basically, which features him discussing the film and answering questions from the viewers at the time. So that's kind of an interesting interactive commentary. And the other is from 2001 featuring actors Ralph Brown and Paul McGann. There's a new short program featuring Robinson and actor Richard E. Grant, 2025. This program is produced for Criterion, and it features the two of them discussing acting, directing, and their cinematic interests. And it's about 16 minutes long. That's the one new thing you're getting here. But now I'll go through the Arrow stuff in a second. But WITHNAIL and Us, which is a 1999 documentary on the making of the film directed by Yvonne Gordon for UK's Channel 4, which features writer-director Bruce Robinson and some of his key collaborators, including producer Paul Heller, casting director Mary Selway, and actors Ralph Brown, Richard E. Grant, and, of course, Paul McGann. It's about 26 minutes long. And then there's a British Film Institute Q&A from 2017 with Robinson and Grant, moderated by BFA's programmer of cinema events, Justin Johnston, and that was done in the sort of celebration of the 30th anniversary of the movie. So some good solid features there, right? Okay. So we go over to our Arrow 4K. It sounds like the same transfer. It's described the same way. Let's see here. It says the commentary by Bruce Robinson. It doesn't list what that track is, so I can't be sure if that's exactly the same or not. This one has an audio commentary by critic and writer Kevin Jackson, author of the BFI Modern Classic on WITHNAIL and I, so a different commentary. Again, I'm going to keep both here, obviously. All 4 original WITHNAIL and I weekend documentaries, first screened on Channel 4 in 1999, including The Peculiar Memories of Bruce Robinson, which looks at the director's career, WITHNAIL and Us, which is mentioned obviously here, which focuses on the film's making, and 2 shorter documentaries, I Demand to Have Some Booze and WITHNAIL on the Pier. So this has that doc plus more. Interview with production designer Michael Pickwode, an appreciation of WITHNAIL and I by Sam Bain, co-creator of Peep Show and Fresh Meat, archival interview with Bruce Robinson, and yeah, so a few more extras here. But the British Film Institute Q&A, you know what? I don't know that that's included here. So, and the second commentary with, so you got, this is going to be hard for you because, you've got some things here that aren't included here and then vice versa. So, I don't know. Like I said, I like the movie a lot. I'm going to keep both. Real briefly, I'm curious what the opening of this essay says. Bruce Robinson's gift for colorful language is the most striking mark of his talent. This has doubtless held him back in places where translation is required or such dexterity is not appreciated. He himself once noted that a sentence in WITHNAIL and I, 1987, "We've gone on holiday by mistake," hilariously and obviously absurd to a native English speaker, could lose everything as a subtitle. Something like, "We've erroneously gone on holiday," isn't funny at all. That is true. There is a lot about context. And anyway, very excited to have both of these 4Ks. I just love that movie so much. Okay, lastly, we have another upgrade in transfer only. Really, if I'm honest, and this is for Chungking Express, the Wong Kar-wai film from 1994. I've been a fan of this one since Tarantino put it out on DVD or VHS, actually, as part of his Rolling Thunder video line, which was in the late 90s. A very exciting line. And some of those films are getting Blu-ray releases to this day from other labels. But this one definitely made an impression and was my introduction to Wong Kar-wai, and one that just sort of blew me away in terms of cinematography, in terms of soundtrack, in terms of performances. I was just bowled over by it, understandably. The whiplash double-pronged Chungking Express is one of the defining works of the 1990s cinema and the film that made Wong Kar-wai an instant icon. Two heartsick Hong Kong cops, Takeshi Kaneshiro and Tony Leung Chi-wei, both jilted by ex-lovers, cross paths at the Midnight Express takeout food stand where the ethereal pixie waitress Fei Wong works. Anything goes in Wong's gloriously shot and utterly unexpected charmer, which cemented the sex appeal of its gorgeous stars and forever turned canned pineapple and the Mamas and Papas California Dreamin' into tokens of romantic longing. That is for sure. When California Dreamin' popped up in this movie, and a song that I knew for sure, my parents were big Mamas and Papas fans, but it was just like, it just popped in this way. And I love how Tarantino would go on to use the Jose Feliciano cover of California Dreamin' to wonderful effect in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Not necessarily a full circle moment. I don't know that the two things are connected, but I did love that. Okay, so this is a 4K restoration with 5.1 surround. It says both supervised and approved by director Wong Kar-wai. So this is a 4K and a Blu-ray. And now in terms of the extras, I mean, it does look really good. I got to say that. But I have the old Wong Kar-wai box set. And, I know this is it's not mentioned here, but I'm assuming this is the updated cut that he did or whatever of this movie that's different than the original Blu-ray that came out. And I forget the differences of that. I don't love that kind of post-release tinkering, but what are you going to do? It's the guy's film. So, so I don't know that these extras are any different than what you got on your original Blu-ray. I know that the restoration may be different. It doesn't mention the year though, but the interview from 2002 with cinematographer Christopher Doyle, it's about 10.5 minutes, and he's going back to the original cafe, and he's just being interviewed about the film in general, and that's cool. There's also an episode of Moving Pictures from 1996 that features interviews with Wong Kar-wai and Christopher Doyle, and that's about 12 minutes long. So only a couple extra things, and then deleted scenes. I think there's 3 deleted scenes included. So not a really stacked release. So tougher to make a case for an upgrade, I guess, in some ways. But the essay entitled Electric Youth by Amy Taubin. Chungking Express 1994 was the masculine feminine of the 1990s, a pop art movie about cool 20-somethings looking for love in the city that has replaced Paris as the center of the world's cinema imagination. What Jean-Luc Godard did for the children of Marx and Coca-Cola, in the mid-1960s, Wong Kar-wai did for the restless Hong Kong youth during the anxious decade that preceded the handoff to China. Masculine Feminine, 1966, and Chungking Express were the first films in which their respective directors focused predominantly on characters who were around 10 years their juniors. The generation gap imparts a sense of distance and mixed with a tenderness, and also focuses the films on the dominant issue for heterosexual young adults, how to negotiate the desire and confusion they feel vis-a-vis the opposite sex. Not going to read any more of that, but good start. So anyway, some fun stuff here. I think for me, WITHNAIL and I is a classic. If you haven't seen that, you got to check it out. But Prince of Broadway and Killer Sheep, really, really important, really interesting films. And this one is definitely known, Killer Sheep, but both really neat to see in these wonderful restorations. So got to recommend both of those as strongly as I can to anybody out there that cares. Really great filmmaking and great releases. So anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.